Hello everyone, okaeri or welcome to my channel. My name is Sakura and I'm based in Tokyo. Today, I'm making a video that is extremely useful and something that I wish I had before trying to get into L&D. This video is called How to Get an L&D Role Without Having Formal Learning and Development Experience. And this video is specifically to go over what experiences I had and what projects I did to build transferable skills into the learning and development field, as well as some parting advice on after you do all of that, how do you actually find the right role for yourself? In the 3 or 4 roles that I actually have had in my career so far, I've actually been hired into them without having formal experience, so I'm quite used to pivoting. And if you haven't watched my How to Change Your Careers video, I highly recommend that one. And then before jumping into the content of today, I also highly recommend, if you're interested in L&D, to take a look at my learning and development deep dive video as well, where I go over what does the L&D field actually look like in tech and what kind of positions are available. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Because you don't have formal experience, you're gonna have to make up for that in 2 different ways. First and foremost is your transferable skills. So what is the skills that you have already built and that you already have that you can transfer into the role that you want to go into? In the next section of the video, I'm gonna go super in depth about the experience that I have and how I use that to get my L&D role, so please stay tuned for that. The second part is essentially thinking, what is the unique skill set that I have that I can bring to this role? For me, again, I went from recruiting and I was hired as a learning and development lead for Japan region for an American fintech company. And let me tell you why I think I got the role instead of someone who had experience, right? So my unique skill sets are as follows. First and foremost, I'm living and working in Tokyo and they want someone who was bilingual. So having my unique skill set of being completely fluent in Japanese and English was a huge hit for them. Another key experience that they were looking for that I had under my belt already was working at big tech companies. Because in this role, they were looking to basically take the startup phase in Japan of this company to a more mature phase. They really wanted someone who had the big tech kind of outlook and experience so that they can apply that to this new role. The last unique skill set that I think they were really looking for that I had, that I think is the most important, is the fact that they were looking for someone to basically be the bridge between local market, so Japan, and then global. They not only wanted someone who was bilingual, but could understand both cultures so that they would be comfortable being able to take global processes and localize them for Japan and being able to understand Japan needs. I think they were willing to be flexible on the hard line of having formal L&D experience because they were looking more for a really great cultural fit, as well as the passion and some experience and knowledge about L&D. So putting this into context for yourself, when you're thinking about pivoting into a learning and development role, think about what are the unique skill sets or language abilities or whatever it is, industry, knowledge that you have that you can bring to a role, right? So here are 5 key skills that I already have that I could use for my new role. First and foremost was project management. The second one is training, design, and delivery. Third is facilitation and presentation skills. Fourth is data analysis and making improvements based on data. And lastly is stakeholder management. Here are the skills that I think I definitely needed on the job but didn't have prior to the job. First, I absolutely did not have any instructional design experience, even though I needed to create trainings from scratch, e-learnings and stuff like that. Second, I had no familiarity with learning management systems or LMS. Third, I did not have any adult learning theories or framework that I studied. Fourth, I didn't have learning and development specific program management skills end to end, like bringing something from start to finish. And lastly, I also did not have any background on L&D frameworks and models that I needed to use on the job. So during my time while I was in recruiting, I focused heavily on developing other skills than recruiting to get this learning and development job. First, because I had always been interested in onboarding and training, I really took initiative to, whenever we had a new hire on our team, to help them onboard. So basically, within my recruiting role, I would help, facilitate training sessions. I would help them upskill in the skills that they needed to succeed in their role. Basically, take them under my wing to monitor them from going from 0 to, let's say, 3 months or 6 months before them becoming a fully fledged employee in recruiting. So being a part of that onboarding process helped me to do, some upskilling sessions like facilitation skills, understand needs of the audience who's taking trainings, etc. I think this is something that anyone can do at any company, at any position. So yeah, definitely take that into consideration. Another key project that I worked on was being a large contributor to an annual career development event that was run by recruiting. So to kind of set the scene, recruiting organization, in Japan at Google, they ran this event yearly to kind of help people in Japan upskill on career development, professional development, things like resume writing. And essentially, I raised my hand and volunteered to be a part of that event. And I didn't even know how high impact that it was gonna be, but it turned out to be a really great, big impact project that I worked on that I think the interviewers were quite impressed about when I talked about it. So at the end of this, I had maybe 2,000 attendees with the working group that I had. We delivered over 60 plus sessions, and my key role in this project was to basically represent the recruiting organization that I was hiring for, so Cloud at the time, and I worked to recruit key stakeholders and senior leaders from the Cloud organization to speak at these sessions. I also helped design and deliver these sessions for, the month-long kind of event. I had this working group within recruiting that, I had to manage as stakeholders to make sure that we were working well and that we were delivering things on time. And again, after delivering these sessions, I had definitely honed in more of my presentation skills that was focused on development, right? Whether it is career or skill development. The third experience that I think actually is quite similar to what I did in L&D is basically I had designed with one other person on my recruiting team a referral training session for new joiners in the Cloud organization. So again, to set the context, part of recruiting is, searching for the right candidates to hire for your roles. And then one of the best ways you can do that is through, referrals from employees at the company. So I essentially wanted to build kind of a culture of referrals where it would be natural for people to refer and encourage people to refer people that they knew in their network. So my colleague and I decided that how can we, build that culture? And our solution was to build a training program on referrals. So talking about what are referrals, how to do it in the actual process, what is the benefit of referring someone, and then we targeted new joiners in the organization that we were hired for because we felt that that was probably part of their work life cycle where they were the most impressionable and were willing to learn, right? Because people are really busy. We designed and developed this training session program, the cadence of it, how to get the new cohorts to sign up for this program. And then we ran that session for, I think, once a month over a period of, over 12 months. This is a kind of interesting experience because it wasn't like the other roles where there was a project that was existing that I raised my hand for and said, I'm interested in. This was an instance where we had a recruiting challenge or a challenge within my actual role. And then I try to help solve that challenge through a training solution, right? So this is something that nobody told me to do, but I wanted to do and I was able to deliver. So in this case, think about what are some of the challenges that you have in your role, or what are the challenges that you want to solve for your organization that you work for, and then maybe think about how you can incorporate learning and development into that solution. So again, another example of me being able to learn about facilitation, about training logistics like recruiting, stakeholder management, training design and delivery. And then also at the end of the day, we were able to prove that by doing this training program, people were referring more. We had a however many % increase in referrals the following year. And we were able to show that data to our stakeholders and say, hey, this is actually making a difference. The last experience, which I think is completely the most unfair but also relevant experience I had, was that I did a 20% project in learning and development. So just to give context again, Google has this really great program where they post on an internal job board these 20% projects that people can apply to. And essentially what it is that outside of your core role that you are doing, you can look at these projects that are posted by other organizations and managers who need help on a specific project that they're working on. So I knew that I was always interested in learning development, so I definitely applied to this one role that was available and I was able to get it. So in this project, another organization was basically transferring their current onboarding training into a completely going from live person to e-learning process. Basically what my contribution was that before migrating the training, they wanted to make sure that the training content itself was relevant still, and also make sure that it was still very effective for the onboarders, right? So they wanted someone to come in and do some research on that and then give data-based evidence to say this is what you recommend for the new program. So essentially what I worked on was I helped identify SMEs, so subject matter experts within that organization, a team I've never worked with, I have no connections with, but leveraged my manager that I was working on with the project to identify. And then I conducted and came up with an interview for basically identifying trends that they, are a part of, that, what kind of resource they use to become successful SMEs, what kind of day-to-day behaviors or tools that they use to be good at their job. And I conducted 1-hour interviews with, I believe, like 16 different SMEs in different regions. So like APAC, EMEA, North America, and Americas. So after I did all those interviews, which took a couple of months and it was really challenging, but luckily the people were amazing. I took all of that qualitative data, I listened to the interviews, looked at the transcript that I made, and basically from that, shared my findings with my manager in the working group saying, hey, so they said that this part of the training, you needed this kind of improvement. You don't talk much about the tooling, but we need to have a session on tooling. And basically I made, again, a qualitative data analysis on the needs of onboarders and then suggested that in a presentation that I did at the end of my project to the manager that I was working with. So because I was able to make data-based improvements and suggestions for an L&D program, I thought that was a really interesting and key thing that I learned from this. And again, going just from 0 to 1 in L&D was a really, really important thing that I did for myself to get this new role. So those 4 key projects and things that I worked on that gave me the transferable skills were the main things that I talked about in my interview in getting my L&D role. I think the key thing is that unfortunately, because your day-to-day job is an altogether different role from L&D, you're gonna have to spend extra time being strategic about the things that you work on that could become transferable in L&D in the future. So again, I raised my hand for some of these opportunities that I saw. I also talked to my manager about how I was interested in L&D, and some of them, they said, hey Sakura, this seems like a great thing. Like, do you want to work on this? I also, took a challenge that I had in my core role and then applied a learning and development solution. So there are many, many different ways to get yourself involved to get these transferable skills. I know it's not easy, but this is extremely necessary to pivot into L&D. So the last thing that I wanted to put in this video is kind of my parting words and advice for how then, after acquiring these skills and building the unique skill set for a specific role in L&D, to how to actually do that. And I think there's 2 pieces of things that you should keep in mind. The first and foremost thing is that even if you have the transferable skills, and even if you are a unique, great candidate for the role that you're looking at, you need to be able to prove that in your interviews. I will make a separate video on interview preparation because I think it is that important and deserves a specific spot on my channel. But I prepared so much for the L&D interviews because I knew that I had to compensate with the experience that I didn't have. So as I kind of talk through my experience with you today in this video, I highlighted like the 4 or more key projects that I worked on that I think is related to the skill set that I could be using. Another thing I did was obviously research about L&D. So again, some of the things that I didn't know about were that there were frameworks and theories that people use in this field to build learning. Something like the Kirkpatrick model, I read a book on that before doing my interview. I also tried to learn about the ADDIE model, which is very frequently mentioned. So really preparing and being able to show up at the interview and say, look, I don't have this formal experience, but I have a list of these transferable skills. And also I know I did my research on all of this is going to help prove to the interviewer that you can do the job and you're the right person for the job. So do not underestimate interview prep. That is where you need to shine to get that role. The last part of my interview, after doing, I don't know, 4 to 5 one-to-one interviews, I had to do a case study where they gave me a scenario in a situation and they basically said, design a hypothetical training program for this kind of audience in this kind of situation for the organization. Obviously, I had no experience in doing that, but I had some time to prep, I think maybe a few days before giving my presentation, and I basically nailed that, and that is when they said, she is the right person for this role. The second piece of advice is that I know if you're watching this video, I talk about your learning development in tech specifically because that's the field that I was in, and I think it is a really cool place to do L&D. But I think you should be open to the industry or the company that you would be getting this L&D role in. It's really hard to get an entry-level role in L&D in tech because it is so competitive and there's going to be so many more people more experienced than you. So I think the best way is to build your L&D experience somewhere else before pivoting into tech, and that's going to be much easier. Alright, so that is how I went from 0 to 1 in learning and development and pivoting into a learning development lead role without any formal experience. I certainly hope this video was enjoyable and also informative to you if you're considering pivoting into this field and industry that I love so much. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment down below. If you found this information useful, please feel free to subscribe to my channel for more content like this, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you later. Bye!